Okay, so you've considered where this coop is, but can you just talk me through what other points you consider about that site before you start?
Yeah, so we have a standard checklist that we use that helps us go through all the things from the environmental constraints, so designations, SSIs, SACs, that sort of thing, to whether there's European protected species, the water courses that there are on site, then the physical constraints, things like power lines, public rights of way, whether there's dangerous sections, outcrops of rock, cliff edges, that sort of thing, to just logistics, whether we've got tenants and neighbours that we need to work with, whether there's a highway nearby. And we have this standard checklist that we go through.
So it sounds like you've got your own checklist, but it's pretty similar to our operational site assessment. Doesn't have to be the same, but you're considering all the key points before you start.
Yeah, it covers all the things that are expected of us through our UKFS certification, so we've sort of tailored it to meet all those requirements.
So in the management plans, we're quite keen that information's shown spatially on a map. I'm guessing that feature would be useful for operational planning as well?
Yeah, so once I've been out on site and I've actually gone through my checklist and had a look at what constraints there are and the things that I want to think about, that's what I'll do. I'll produce a plan which will then have on it annotated all of the things that I've found, the things that I want to protect, specific requirements I have, and I'll use that plan to start talking with the contractor about how we're going to set up what method we might use when we're doing the harvesting.
So you've got this nice, easy site to harvest here. What sort of things are you going to consider in terms of constraints?
Well, my first consideration is the access to the site. It's quite a difficult site to get to begin with, and there's no official way in, so we're going to have to start by looking at the wall down there, the boundary, and how we're going to get through that. And then the considerations like how we're actually going to harvest this site, what's the right kit to use here given the terrain and the size of the trees that we've got. And then I'll start looking at more detailed specifics. We've got a power line, we've got an aqueduct for drinking water just above the site here. We've got a very popular climbing route just above us, so it's full of public access regularly. So yeah, I've got all these different things I've got to consider.
And I guess to a certain extent, you can't make a lot of those decisions till you've got your contractor and the kit they've got and considered how they're going to do the work. And
yeah, that's right. To begin with, I try and get the facts right in my own head so that I know the site and I know the constraints, so I know who the tenant is that we need to talk to, and I make sure that I've already had that discussion prior to meeting with the contractor, and I understand all the details, any of the services, that sort of thing, and any specific requirements that I might have as a member of staff for United Utilities that are to do with water. My main consideration with harvesting is to do with soil disturbance and potential sediment getting into water courses and ending up in reservoirs. I need to ensure that whatever method we decide to use, that we keep any loose material to a minimum, and that everybody on site understands the need to stop if conditions change and we're not able to control that. It's going to be about picking the right extraction route and doing it all the right method of extraction to try and minimise the damage.
In terms of planning the operation with the contractor, I'm guessing the constraints and your operational planning map is also going to help inform things like avoiding archaeology or any veteran trees that you don't want damaging during extraction.
What I would aim to do here is I'd just make some rough notes while I'm on site, obviously scribble down things, and then back at the office I produce a more accurate map that clearly identifies the features that I've found on site, any of the constraints, any things that I particularly want to protect, so that I've got a map that I can send the contractor prior to meeting on site, allows them time to think about their requirements. If I've made specific requests like extra brash, they need to be thinking about where that can come from, that sort of thing. and then we would meet on site with the map and talk through the constraints and how we would accommodate all those constraints and pick the best method.
Mm-hmm. And on this site, is there anything specific to UKFS water guidelines you'd consider?
Well, fuel would be a big consideration here, given the fact that this is drinking water catchment, and we've also got the aqueduct just above us. I'd have to make careful consideration about our fueling points and how we store it, and quantities as well. That's always a consideration for us.
In the management plan, we've agreed you're restocking. I know here you had a lot of larch and beech. I can see you've kind of increased the species diversity with your restocking, which is great. But in terms of restocking this, what other operational considerations do you have?
Well, as with most of the sites here, access originally was a bit of a consideration, how we actually got the trees to the site. The fact that I didn't want additional damage done by vehicles, quad bikes or that sort of thing, creating erosion problems getting out on site during the winter months. And the other thing is we've got to keep on top of stock. We've got sheep ingress issues and we also have deer here, so we need to keep a tight hold of that, make sure the boundaries are managed and that we've got a good management plan in place for keeping on top of the deer.